You are listening to the Living Room Confessional podcast. Hi guys, I'm Courtney and I'm the host of Living Room Confessional. Welcome back to another episode. I know it's been a while, but we are back and I'm going to be putting content on YouTube as well as the podcast platform. So you guys will get to see and interact with me a little bit more. And I know I've been gone for quite a bit of time, but I'm back and there's some new plans that are taking shape, which will be kind of explained as we move forward. But for now, I'm just very thankful that you guys are still here with me. And I wanted to just talk about some changes that are happening with the podcast. At the beginning of the year, I was talking about moving forward and just things that we were going to leave in 2023 and the things that we were taking forward and moving forward and purpose and all those good things. And while I still firmly believe that, I will say, which I've shared already, that 2020 kind of rocked my world at the beginning of the year. Anything that could go wrong went wrong. So it has really been a bit of a labor of love just to even get back on this podcast. There was just so much going on that I couldn't even focus enough to record an episode. So something that I've talked about previously on here is my faith and the fact that it's so important to me, and I can't share life experiences on this platform without giving credit to God, because I wouldn't be where I am without him. And so I am really going to start including my faith in all of these episodes just moving forward from here. We're going to clean up the content. So don't check me if I accidentally curse, but I'm in my refining process. I really want to be honest and open about what my faith is and how things in my life take shape because of my faith. There are things that are blocked and doors that are open because of my faith, things that I pray for. I want to acknowledge that and make sure that God is the forefront of this podcast moving forward, because I really can't honestly share my true life experiences without including him, because he is literally in everything. Now, I know you've heard me talk about my faith here and there. I've gotten very comfortable with it. I actually have a podcast that launches in January that talks about my faith. It is a faith-based podcast and it's interviews and things like that. So Living Room Confessional is going to be very much my personal space where I come on here and talk. It's still going to be every other week. The schedule might change, but it'll still be every other week because it's going to alternate with the other podcasts that I'm doing as well. And that one is full on interviews. I don't even know if you will ever see me on that podcast by myself, except for the first episode. So yeah, I just wanted to come on here and kind of clarify that this podcast is still going to be generating episodes. It's just that the interviews aren't going to really be on here. There may be some, but they're going to be kind of few and far in between. So I just wanted to kind of set the record, because I did say that I was going to do more interviews on this podcast at the beginning of 2024, but that's probably not going to happen for a while. But something that I really wanted to talk about was God's calling on your life. So this podcast came to me pretty much, 2019. I started it in 2020. Yeah, it kind of came to me. It's something I've been interested in and I always wanted to do. And the beautiful thing is that we pray for things in other seasons of our lives, and sometimes they don't come to be until a lot later in our lives. And that's something that happened with this podcast and with the new one. So the new one, I got the vision for that 2 years ago, and I literally just getting off my butt to get it started. But with this one, I think it was a shorter transition time in between of kind of having that realization that this is something that I want to do, to moving and actually doing it. So I wanted to talk about God's calling, and that put it into perspective. When he calls you to do something, You really, really need to step up and pay attention, or just sit up and pay attention. Because the thing about it is, when God calls you to something, he's not calling someone else to do it. He's calling you. And no one else can do it for you. And I have notes over here, which is why I keep looking over here. But the thing that you really can't stop thinking about, I was dreaming about this podcast. I could not get it out of my head. I had visions for the title, the setting, the colors, like what I wanted the logo to look like. He really built it up in my mind and allowed me to really just creatively start building it. And I knew when things were right because I knew what they were supposed to look like. And I would get visions from God, and they really helped me keep going. But that goal that you like cannot stop thinking about, that thing that you feel in your heart that you're supposed to be doing, you won't, like, it's not going to leave you alone. It may go dormant from time to time, but the thought will always come back to you. And you may think that you can't do it, but something that really resonates with me that people love to remind me of is God is not going to call you somewhere where he will not equip you or keep you while you are in that space. So you can always trust and believe that when he calls you to something, he will be with you and he will prepare a way for you and he will provision for you, whether that's resources, financial, it does not matter. If he calls you to something, he is going to be there every step of the way. You really have to trust in him. And when God calls you to something, it's a testament of your faith. You are going to be tested and tried. And it's just like everything that could go wrong might go wrong. You might run out of money. You might bite off more than you can chew. You're going to feel overwhelmed. People are not going to support you like you think that they should. Something that I had to get over really quickly was expecting friends and family to tune into this podcast. When I first started, we were talking about life experiences. There's a little bit of God in there, but I wasn't quite comfortable being so open with my faith during that time. So I kind of put him on the back burner. First mistake. But the provision came in. I literally had like 9 or 10 people lined up to come on the podcast before I even went live. Like, I was pre-recording. If you ever start a podcast, pre-record if it's just you. I was pre-recording and he was just sending me everybody that I talked to, everybody that I would ask, even if they hadn't done a podcast before, they were like, absolutely. But when I would go to family or really close friends, and you would expect them to be like, yeah, I'm on board, whatever you need, they were all like, no. So my dad was like super supportive, which I am so appreciative of because he made it easier for me to just get out there and do what I needed to do and allow the creative juices to flow, because I had, like, my dad's support is everything to me. So that kind of trumped everybody else at the end of the day because I had him. But something that it just shocked me. And I think that a lot of people don't anticipate the amount of people in your life that aren't going to be there for the ride. You're going to do a lot of this alone and it's going to get hard, and they are not going to be that supportive all the time. Or they may try to give you reality checks, and I'm doing quotations if you can't see me, give you those reality checks where they're like, well, maybe you shouldn't do it. Like, it is very hard and it's just you. But the thing about it is when God calls you, you're not by yourself. You have to trust that he is going to provide everything that you need as you need it in his timing, not yours. So I pretty much had to let go of everyone else's expectations. I set my own expectations, and the podcast did very well. The first year, that whole first season, I didn't have any cancellations. Every episode went the way that I wanted to, that it should have gone. I had great conversations, great guests. I really warmed up. It's so funny because the first episode, I always tell people when I tell them I have a podcast, they're like, oh my gosh, I'll go listen. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And then I'm like, just don't listen to the first episode. It's horrible. Bless Ashley because she carried me through that episode. And I had to make it up later by bringing her back on once I was comfortable. But you can actually see how my faith has grown throughout the progression of the podcast, which I absolutely love, because you have a section in the middle where I completely stepped away from the calling and what I knew I was supposed to be doing on the podcast. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do my own thing. It's all good. Like, God is still supporting me. When you step outside of his calling, God will let you crash and burn. Please believe that. I know that sounds really horrible, but it's a lesson. Because when he calls you to do something and you're like, no, I'm going to do it my way, or I'm going to put my spin on it, and I'm going to step away from what you have told me to do, he's going to be like, all right, like a good father. That reminded me of State Farm, sorry. Like a good father, he's going to be like, okay, I'm going to stand over here and I'm going to let you try to drive on your own. All the while, he's been the one at the wheel that's been guiding me throughout this entire process. And so it took me really falling on my face and being like, okay, I did so many things wrong. In this season of the podcast, like, I started having issues with guests, people not holding up their end of the bargain. I started going through it. It got really, really hard. I started missing episodes. Life started getting hard and everything started getting in the way because I really wanted the podcast to look very much like other podcasts that I see in the world. And that's not what it was meant for. So pretty much, let's cut to commercial and jump a couple of years. I'm still like, I was still going through it. The podcast would get better, but then life would get harder. But then it's not so much that I stepped outside of God's will and wasn't doing what I was supposed to do with the podcast anymore. It became the issue of me being, well, it's not an issue. I was being sifted for another thing that I've been called to. And that meant that I was going to go through some things because I had some lessons to learn and some people to let go of, which we will talk about in a later episode. And that's one of the reasons why it's been such a hard year. And I've had to like kind of step away because any and everything was just like, my life was chaotic. There's no other way to put it. My life was very chaotic and I was insanely emotional. So yeah, but when God calls you to something, it's still gonna be there. He may call you to other things, to use your gifts in other ways, but at the end of the day, he still has a purpose and a plan for everything that he has called you to, and he's not going to leave you during any point of it. Even when you stepped away, even when I stepped away, he's still there. He's just letting you do what you want to do the way that you want to do it so that you can see that, oh, I actually do need him because this is his plan, not mine. So I really need to like, step back in line. And I mean, it's a hard fall sometimes, but at the same time, some of us are hard-headed, myself included, for sure. I just want to encourage you, like, do not be afraid when you feel like God is calling you towards something. Start praying about it and like just seeking out what he would have you do. Start asking him, like, God, is this what you want me to do? And start looking for the opportunities and the doors that are going to open and just like step through. Believe me that God will close a door if it's not for you. It will not work out. It is literally like trying to like lift a car to get through a door that God did not open for you. And so I just want to keep going with my notes, which is why I'm looking over here again. Something that I also wanted to point out is when God is calling you to do something, look for his voice. It is the hardest voice to hear because the world is a lot louder than he is. A lot of times when I've gone through seasons and I'm like looking and trying to listen for God's voice, I've had to step back and step away. Cut to commercial, go back to earlier this year, when I had to step away, I had to go into a bit of a season of prayer because when God calls you to something, he's going to give you instructions. He is going to, like I said, guide you, but you need to listen for what he's telling you to do and you need to eliminate the distractions. I actually, at the beginning of this year, I recorded an episode and it was called Distractions. And I was talking about how sometimes the distractions, we blame Satan for everything. Like we give him so much credit that he doesn't even really need to do anything. But sometimes it's actually us. We are not giving God the time and attention that he needs so that we can hear him. We're so busy watching YouTube videos, working, doing stuff with kids, doing things with friends, just living life and trying to have fun. And something that I realized with myself was when I'm not working, I'm reading, I am listening to a podcast, I'm listening to music, I'm watching YouTube videos, I'm studying other people who are speakers, I'm doing all these things to better myself, but I actually wasn't reading my Bible. I was not having my prayer time like I was supposed to. And I definitely wasn't just being still and having moments where I just sit in silence and say, God, what is it that you're trying to tell me? What am I missing? Like, I want to hear your voice. God speaks through dreams. He speaks through vision. He speaks audibly. Like, I can't tell you how he's going to speak to you, but I can tell you that if you listen and you ask God to speak to you, he will. You just need to be still and give him the opportunity to speak to you. When I hear God's voice, and I'm talking about audibly, it's always almost like, it's almost like a soft whisper. Like, if I was doing anything else, I wouldn't have heard it. And I will say that God does repeat himself, because like I remember the last time I was praying, God, I need to hear from you. I need to hear from you. And I was just kind of like waiting and waiting. And then I had like this kind of moment where I was having a hard time. There were so many things going on with relationships with friends and work, and just, it was like everything was piling on top of everything else. And this is not a pity party. Like, just things were just happening that were out of my control, and I just couldn't handle it. And so I just literally had a moment where I was just like starting to cry, and I was like, God, I don't know what to do. And I need to hear from you. And I was by myself. It was very quiet, and I heard his voice. And me being me, I was like, okay, is that me or is that you? And it just happened again. I know the sound of my thoughts in my head for my voice. I can't replicate that. The peace and the calm that comes with hearing his voice, I could not replicate that. And he said it again. And I was like, oh my God, God is talking to me. And then again. And I was just like, and then it was silent again. But he gave me exactly what I needed to move forward. And the amount of peace and joy that I had just walking away from that situation, that I could feel, it's like the Holy Spirit kind of took over. And like, I just, it's him. Like when you hear God speak, it. It's literally unmistakable, especially when you're looking for it and he repeats it. It's just, I would have to say, try it. Like, just try it. If you are looking for God and you really want to hear his voice, you have to be still, you need to be quiet, and you have to listen for him. One of my favorite things is seek and you shall find, knock and the door will be opened. And a lot of those verses, they're like, oh, you can't really take that literally. I took it literally. And so when I'm seeking, like, I find him. I kid you not, when you allow God in, and he really starts working on your heart and changing you from the inside out, and you really start seeking him and listening for his voice, you start seeing him in everything. Like, it does not matter the situation. I can find God in everything. And it is such a beautiful thing, and it's so refreshing, but it's taken years and a lot of work on my relationship and my faith with God, that like, I can't tell you that, oh, it's going to happen if you try. You really need to solidify and grow your relationship with Christ in order to have those moments where you're just like, God, where did you come from? And he was like, I've been here the entire time. And I feel like God is calling a lot of people to step out in faith and just to step out in different things, to speak to people. I was driving a couple of months ago, and I just had this feeling, and it's not always an audible thing, like I said. I had this feeling, and I just kind of turned my head, and there was a homeless man sitting on the side of the road, and something said he needs food. Like, I just had a thought. I was like, he really needs some food. Well, me being me, I was like, but I'm in traffic and I'm like 2 lanes over, and I'm going to turn and I'm going to Crate and Barrel. I'm really excited about that. So I'm not going to stop. Well, when I came back around, there was an ambulance there, and he was laying on the ground. I don't know if he needed food, but I feel like had I gotten out of traffic and just turned and went over there, he may have needed water. He may have needed food. He may have needed me to call an ambulance. I don't know who else did. I don't know who called. I didn't see anybody over there. But I really felt conviction in my heart that I did not listen when God called me to go do something. And so you really, really, really need to pay attention. Those feelings that you get and you're like, this is not me. I don't want to do that. Sometimes it is really the Holy Spirit tugging on your heartstrings and trying to tell you to go do something, and you need to pay attention. And while you're not going to catch every single one of them, because like I said, life gets really busy and sometimes you're really just not paying attention, or you just don't hear it, or you're not as receptive to it. When you do feel it and you're just like questioning, go do it. Like, I kid you not, the drive home was a hard drive. When I passed by that situation and I saw how bad it was, I felt horrible. Now, this is just like everyone's faith is not the same. I'm in a different place than probably some of you listening. So I'm not expecting the same thing to happen to you or for you to feel bad or because you didn't stop for a homeless person or something like that. I'm just saying, when God places something in your heart, I don't care if it's a business, I don't care if it's to go talk to somebody, I don't care if it's to show kindness or pay for the person behind you at Starbucks or in a drive-through somewhere. Pay attention. When you are seeking God, He will talk to you in the most random fashion and ask you to do things that you're just like, why would I do that? If that's something and you're like, why would I do that? And it's not like a bad thing, if it's something that's evil or something that can be menacing or something like that, that's not God. Every time that God has called me to do something, it is through compassion and kindness. It's through the fruits of the Spirit. Like, I'll feel joy in my heart or peace, or I'll feel the need to be compassionate or kind towards somebody. It's not something that makes me do a double take, like, oh my God, that's a horrible thought. Like, why would I do that? So take it just like in stride. God calls us to do all kinds of things. And whatever it is that He is calling you to do in your life, even if you don't understand it, I would say seek out somebody who can kind of help you figure it out. Whether that's a pastor, your parent, a friend, ask. Because sometimes what may not make sense to us could be crystal clear to someone else. God uses other people all the time and they speak a word to me. I was leading e-group a couple of weeks ago, and I felt like I was being called to lead e-group or have my own e-group for, God, 2 years now. But the opportunity never seemed to present itself. And so then my e-group leader was like, hey, I need a co-person. And I was just like, she's like, I know we've talked about this before. And I was like, yeah, we have talked about this before. But I was like, I don't think this is like the season for me to have an e-group or co-lead an e-group. I was like, let me pray about it. Let me think about it. And I'll get back to you. So I go home and I'm praying about it. And then I just have that revelation where it's just like, if God is opening a door, creating an opportunity, why don't I walk towards the opportunity? And if He closes the door, then it's not meant to be. But if He leaves the door open, perhaps I should just be ready to walk through it. So I went and I told her, I was like, yeah, I'll do e-group. So let's cut across, like it's been a couple of months now. I've led a couple of e-groups, meetups at this point. And I will say I've had moments where it's just been like, I feel on fire. Like, this is so good. I feel like refreshed and energized after e-group ends. But then the most recent one, I was just like, I don't think, like, I led e-group and it was like Murphy's Law. Anything that could go wrong went wrong. And like, we couldn't get in the church. Nobody was there to unlock the door. E-group started at like 7 p.m. I got there at 6 so that I could set up. And then I felt like I was being rushed because I needed to set up the chairs and I had all these things that I needed to do. I had gone to Costco and gotten cookies, and I'm looking at these cookies like, these are full of sugar. I shouldn't have bought these cookies because I don't buy cookies from Costco because yeah, whatever. I found something wrong with everything. And that is not the norm for me. I'm not positive Patty, but I'm not negative Nelly either. I'm somewhere in between. And so I go and I set up the room. One person's there. So I'm talking to her and we're having a good conversation. People start trickling in. And something I have to deal with is I'm a very punctual person and I take it personally when people are late. Even if it's not my event, I take it personally. That's my own problem that I need to work on. So people start trickling in, and I was just like, everybody's late. Nobody wanted me to do this. Nobody knew I was leading e-group. All this is just in my head, just like word vomit, like from nonsense in my brain. I literally go through, like, everybody starts coming, and we go through the lesson, and I pray us out and everything, and I load up the chairs, I put them back. I'm just like, I need to get out of here. I gotta get out of here. And so I'm trying to put the chairs back and get out of the church as quickly as possible. Get in my car, and I'm driving home, and I'm like, this is a sign. God, I'm not supposed to be doing e-group. Like, this went horribly. I don't think I did a good job. I don't think I'm cut out for this. Like, I was just like, because I didn't even follow the lesson plan. I felt like the questions were so surface level. I was asking deeper questions, and people were like, what do you mean? Or can you repeat the questions? And I was like, I didn't do a good job because I wasn't connecting with people. Like, I had every negative comment to say after that e-group. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to call my e-group leader, and I'll tell her I'm not going to lead e-group anymore. So I just feel like something was pulling me away from e-group, and I was just like, I can't do this. I'm not connected to this group. I need to find another group. And I'm just going through like everything in the book, every excuse in the book. A couple of days later, I'm talking to my e-group leader, and I was like, yeah, I don't think that e-group went very well. And she was like, oh, I got really good feedback from so-and-so. Like, they said it went really well. And I was like, okay. Well, I was like, that's good to hear. But I really don't think that this is like something I should be doing right now. Like, I was gonna call you after and tell you that I didn't think I should be doing it anymore. And she goes, I got feedback from multiple people who liked this session. Like, it was good. And she was like, do not let the enemy pretty much steal your joy. And after you've poured out and you've done what God called you to do, and don't let him try to distract you and take away everything that God has done through you. Like, you did good. And that was exactly the words that I needed to hear. And this is why I always say, like, when God calls you to something, have people in your community that can speak life into you and kind of help you figure out if this is you or if this is God. If you're not sure, I always say pray about it, but find somebody that you can trust and talk to them about it. Because the thing about that is you don't want to miss out on God's calling, because God's calling on your life is only going to build you up to the next thing that he calls you to, and everything is always better than the last thing that he called you to. And so I just think that this is something that is very, very important to me. And like I said, I've put a lot of things on the back burner. And now that I've really opened up and said, God, just take the wheel, go ahead and drive. And I'm here for it. Whatever you need, like, I'll be a vessel for it. He is really opening doors and opening me up to things. And talking about my faith on this podcast and on the new one that's coming is paramount. Like, I'm very, very excited to share. This is very new for me. And there are a lot of things that are going to be spinning out from these new opportunities. But I wouldn't have any of this, and none of this would be happening had I shut the door and not listened when God called me, and not had the faith enough in the relationship to just step out. So I just want to remind you to trust God when he's calling you to something. Have a community, seek out like support from people that you trust, and then make sure that you're prayerful above all else. Pray and talk to God about everything, and make sure that you're not misunderstanding, but don't be afraid when he calls you to something, because he will not leave you. He will definitely be with you. And it's just another adventure, just to get you to the next part or stage or season in your life. So yeah, that is today's episode. I just really want to make sure that we are taking full advantage of the things that God's calling us to. There's no reason to be scared. There's no reason to run from it. Take it from a pro. Like, I can't run in real life, but I'm a track star when it comes to running from God or trying to run from God, because you can't. Anyway, yeah, I really want to make sure that you guys, that somebody's saying it out loud. and that you are really staying prayed up. And whatever he calls you to, he will be with you throughout the entire thing. And you have nothing to worry about. Just like trust and believe and keep building that relationship and stay in communication with him. Whether it's prayer, whether you're listening to hear from God, just stay connected. And I'm gonna end the episode here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I don't normally do videos, so yeah, let me know how you feel about the YouTube video. I am gonna post it. The same, like if you're listening on the podcast on a streaming platform, thank you. Please like and leave a review and subscribe and share it with your friends. But yeah, I'm going to be putting out a lot more visual content as well as audio. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Thanks again for tuning in. Bye.